Hello, and welcome back to another CMAC tutorial. Lisa here, and in this video, I'm going to be talking about the anatomy of a screenplay, the format, the structure, and some helpful do's and don'ts of the craft. Stay tuned. Some things we'll be discussing today are scene headers, action, character descriptors, dialogue, and parentheticals, and we're going to do that by looking at three major films: The Truman Show, The Hangover, and The Matrix. But before we begin, I'd like to note that while structuring a screenplay might feel like an exact science with strict rules, there's actually some flexibility, and you may notice some differences in the examples in this video. Let's get started. First, let's take a look at the anatomy. This is a scene header or slug line, this is the action, and this is the dialogue. All professional scripts maintain this format. They use the same font, Courier New, and use specific margins for the dialogue. You don't have to remember every nuance of this format to have a proper looking screenplay. There are plenty of free apps and online platforms that will do this for you, which I'll go over in an upcoming tutorial, so look out for that. The Hangover uses a couple of different scenes to tell the opening of the story. Scenes in a script refer to the setting the action takes place. To indicate a change of setting in the script, the author will use scene headings, or what is sometimes referred to as slug lines. These tell the crew on a production where the story not only takes place, but what it generally should look like. The first example here is EXT Bel Air Bay Club, Pacific Palisades, California, morning. In one line, we know that the scene is outdoors, EXT meaning exterior, at the Bel Air Bay Club in California in the morning. All slug lines give the same 3 bits of information: whether the scene is inside or outside, where it takes place, and what time of day it is. The next slug line does this again, but more simply. INT, bridal suite, day. This time, we're inside. INT means interior, in a bridal suite, and it's daytime. The slug lines are as detailed or simple as you need them to be for the story. For some stories, day is plenty of information. For other stories, dusk, dawn, or an exact time like 5 a.m. might be required. It's all up to you, the writer. Action is what we call all the paragraphs that aren't dialogue. Typically, it's the first thing you see right after a slug line. And it's also what makes up most of all screenplays. And action doesn't just mean literal action, it also encompasses scene descriptions. Going back to The Hangover, we can see a block of text here after the first slug line. It's a beautiful spring morning in the Palisades. High atop the cliffs, looking out over the Pacific Ocean, sits the exclusive Bel Air Bay Club. Workers bustle about the lawn, setting up a high-end wedding. The action isn't just telling us what's happening on the screen, but also how it looks. The only major rule here, and for screenwriting in general, is that everything written therein must be present tense, and only what can be seen and heard. It's important to remember that the script isn't the final product. The film is. The audience is going to be living in the moment, so to speak, when they're watching the movie. So the script should reflect that. And action can give us some space to do things like introduce characters or highlight props and sounds that are important to production or editing. Let's switch gears and take a look at a scene from The Truman Show. Near the opening of the film, while the story is still giving a sense of who Truman is and the world he lives in, this scene is set outside of Truman's house as he's leaving for work. Notice that Truman, his neighbor Spencer, and even the dog Pluto have their names in all caps. It's common practice to capitalize names when a character first arrives in a scene. Not just when they're introduced, but the first time they appear in any scene. Doing so makes it easy for anyone on the crew to see which actors are needed for any given scene without having to dig through the script. The same is true for any sound effects or props that are important to the story. Sometimes, a scene requires a lot of description without any dialogue. Like this scene when Truman gets in his car to head to work, but is stopped by a stage light crashing to the pavement. To ward off reading fatigue, the author kept the blocks of action short, roughly 4 to 5 sentences or less. Preferably, it should be no more than 4 lines. Unlike novels and short stories, the script doesn't have to adhere to traditional paragraph rules. Breaking the action up by the number of lines is not only easier to navigate, but it also allows for enough space to make notes if you're the director or simply want some feedback. The last thing we'll cover is character descriptors, dialogue, and parentheticals. For this example, we're going to take a look at a personal favorite of mine, The Matrix. In this scene, we're introduced to our lead, Neo. The action is kept short, 4 lines or less. It describes the setting as well as introduces the main character. Neo's name is in all caps, but that's not all. This line here, a man who knows more about living inside a computer than outside one, is about his character. It's an exception to the only what you can see and hear rule in writing a screenplay. Most scripts, not all, will include 1 to 2 characteristics to describe a character. These go beyond physical traits, i.e. brown eyes, brown hair, 6 feet tall, etc., and tells the crew who the character is. Again, not all scripts include this, but it can help deliver a lot of helpful information to the crew, the person in charge of casting, and especially the actor. If you choose to write one, it's key to keep it concise and to the point and should go next to the first time their name appears in the script. Let's jump ahead a few pages to the famous scene where Neo receives a call from Morpheus for the first time while at work. The dialogue always sits in the center of the page under a name in all caps. Quotation marks are unnecessary because the dialogue stays confined to a column down the middle of the page. Easy to recognize, easy to follow. While the action is broken up to 4 lines or less, generally the dialogue isn't. Don't worry about creating breaks in the lines of dialogue. What's different here is the parentheses to the voice. It says OS, which stands for off screen. Another variation of this is VO for voiceover, which we see here for Neo's entire conversation with Morpheus as he's guided through the office building to escape the agents. Using OS or VO means we don't see who said the line, we only hear them. It's a common practice for dialogue taking place over the phone, or in this example, where Neo only heard the FedEx guy before seeing him. Parentheticals are also great for general direction when you want to indicate a pause or action during dialogue. Directions such as laughing or if a character is saying something under their breath. It's really up to you. Refrain from writing too much direction, however. Things like angles and camera movements can detract from the story when you're trying to build a cast and crew. Save those steps for the director. Once those have been added in, it's no longer a screenplay, it's now a shooting script. Screenwriting isn't all that different from all the creative writing that we did in school. We still need characters, some conflict, a beginning, middle, and an end. The place where people really struggle usually is getting a hang on writing it only what you can see and hear and in the present tense. Luckily, there are databases online that post up movie scripts free for us to read, like the ones I used in this video. You can check out how the pros do it and reference how they filmed it. Fun fact, many scripts differ from the final version, like The Hangover. This means that whatever you write down on the page isn't written in stone. Dream big. Write it all down. Worry about how you're going to pull it off later. Be sure to check out other CMAC tutorials on this channel. To learn more about who we are and what we do, visit cmac.tv. Until next time, this is Lisa signing off. Thanks for watching.